You know, you said that right the second it went live, right? The opening to the video is now chat going, let's get this person started. Amazing. It makes it sound like you said it and not me.
There'll be backing music to this one.
All right.
Yeah, that's it going.
Is there anything that we need to run through first before we get into light curves? There's nothing massively outstanding on the repo that needs dealing with, is there?
So my main frustration is like what are we going to do with these hashes, these figure hashes?
I don't know. There's not a lot we can do, to be honest. I mean, the thing is, we can switch from hashes to whole files if we wanted, but if one of the dependencies change, it's still going to cause a problem. Although Tom R has a package he calls PyTest which stores the full figures, and then it has a tolerance on the image, so if it only changes it a little bit, the test doesn't fail. But that involves storing the whole image in the repo, which is why we came up with the figure hashes idea in the first place.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do.
Is it?
Is a pain in the butt.
Yeah, it just seems like everything is breaking. So
I think at the moment it's breaking lots because of the matplotlib upgrade, and I think a couple of things around the matplotlib upgrade have caused it to break, and then they rebuilt the packages and it broke again. Let me see whether I can kick it. Rebuild. See whether I can fix it. I mean, I've been paying a lot of attention, and I'm not going to be paying a lot of attention for the next couple of weeks, I don't think. Got passed by Viva.
Yeah, that's obviously a good thing to do. And you'll probably have some corrections, right?
Probably. Lots, I would imagine. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Oh, hello, Jack. Hello.
Hey, hello.
Audio problems.
Fair enough. Right. Yeah. There's that pull request I made that updates the figure hashes, but the Windows build has broken. So let's see whether I've just restarted the Windows build. We'll see whether that comes back. Hopefully that will fix it, and then we can fix everything else with it. Is there anything else? More Solar XY fixes. Should probably just merge that. Actually, that needs backporting now. I must backport that, and I'll forget if I merge it. Oh, that don't merge.
So just a case of you just have to copy and paste different numbers into your tests, or different hashes into your tests.
So there's a way of updating them built in that Albert wrote. So if you delete the database file and then rerun the tests, it will recreate you a new database file that you then copy into the right place. The challenge is just making sure that they're right when you do that, because you don't get to see the plots, which is something I'd like to change. But I think that if there's no hash database, it should display you the plots so that you can check that they're right. But I don't know how to do that. I need to look into it. I'll add it to a very long list. I think I opened an issue for something like that. Yeah, 1610.
Trying to remember why we had this in the. What was the pressing reason that we had to make sure that the figures?
We had no way of testing the plot code at all, so we
Yeah,
weren't even executing it. And I think we released a point release where one of the plot functions just didn't work because no one tested it. When I say no one, I really mean me, of course. But seeing how I package the release, it is ultimately my fault. It's always my fault, you see. Okay.
Isn't there a way to do a visual comparison of the plots? I mean,
yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing. At the moment, we save the plots in the tests, save out a PNG file, and then we compare the hash of that PNG file to a reference hash. And we do it like that so that we don't store all the pictures in the repository and blow the repo up with all the pictures as they change. But that has some downsides, like any tiny change to any pixel of the PNG kind of breaks the test. There's no way to build in a tolerance when you're only storing a hash.
Is it the pixels of the PNG or the header?
Well, yeah, either.
Mm-hmm.
But at the moment, yeah, that's what I was saying. Basically, is there needs to be a way to compare the plots, or at least not even if not compare the plots, just see the new ones so that you can go, yeah, that looks like a plot and hasn't gone completely mad. Although comparing the plots would be nice, but that would involve running a test on multiple commits from PyTest, and that would be interesting. Because it's the thing, the problem is the tests are breaking not because the code is changing, but because the plotting library is changing. Like, you update matplotlib and it outputs a slightly different PNG, and it makes the tests break. Anyway, do we want to get into Lycurve a bit?
So no PRs will be. There's no PRs ready to go. I mean, they're all breaking for.
They're all breaking. I mean, SolarXY. I'll merge SolarXY, so that's fine. Part that fail, so it can't be completely broken. That needs backporting. I must remember to backport that. Figure hashes is still broken. See, that's really annoying, is that the figure hashes are now currently outputting differently on Windows and Linux, which is really, really irritating.
Do we know if they're different for OS X as well?
No, they're the same on Linux and OS X.
Okay.
Because Travis is parsing, and Travis tests both. Okay, I'm going to merge the figure hashes change so that Travis is parsing and Atfire isn't, because it's better that way around. To keep our eye on Atfire, hopefully it will come back when they rebuild the Windows packages.
I wonder if something has changed fundamentally in Windows, like if they're using a completely different rendering backend or something like that.
I don't know, yeah, that's the thing, it could be like a libpng change or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, I need to look at it. Or someone needs to look at it. Maybe moving to a Git LFS remote with the actual PNGs in it is a better solution now that there is such a thing. I don't know. Can anyone see any other pull requests that could actually do with merging or reviewing? Steve's contour one is interesting. I need to look at that. So I'm not sure it's right. I don't know whether it will work with WCS axis properly. But I need to test that before accuse him of writing broken code. I don't think there's anything else out.
What about Dan's operational goals?
Yeah, that's true.
That's merged, right? But is it that the backport one isn't merged?
Yeah, that's the backport.
Yeah, no, I still got.
We merged the backport one.
There's a 0.6 on it. SunPy
Yeah.
0.6.
Oh, you still got an open 0.5 backport as well.
What?
1324. To be fair, that could do with backporting to 0.5. Should probably tag it as 0.5.
All right, so I just see that the checks failed on that, which they didn't before, but obviously that's what you've been talking about beforehand with Travis and
Interesting
after.
that both of those have failed.
Yeah.
Why have both of those failed? And also, it's probably the online build that actually matters for those tests, I guess. I'll give you pad width must be of integral type. That's my bad. Entries from database, not necessarily your fault. That is a known bug on 0.6. I really need to tidy 0.6 up. And the figure hashes. And integral type. Oh, you boy, it's all broken. Okay, that's good enough. There are lots of bugs on 0.6, but none of them are your fault.
Okay, that's comforting. Not from any other point of view, though.
Some stuff got fixed in master, but never got backported, and I don't know what it is. Anyone else? Got anything I've missed?
Maybe we should try and stop putting off the inevitable.
Yeah.
Talk about light curve.
Come on then. So, did you... Oh, finished. Where do you want to start?
Do you have something written down that we can have a look at?
I started toying a little bit with it on Friday, but I haven't done anything since. And at this point in time,
a design or something like that. Or?
So there is an open SEP for it.
Yeah.
It's just as far as we've got design-wise.
well, the original idea of the SEP, as I understand it, was to make light curve very similar to map, so that the two work fairly similarly. The API is fairly similar for users, and also that stuff like the downloading of files can be used in a very similar way for both. So the benefits of that were easy to understand and maintain across the two different classes, right? Am I describing it well enough there?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know much about those objects. So I was just intrigued because I'm happy to sort of tap away in it, when I've got an hour free here and there. So that's why I kind of asked about it. But as I understand map, you have to put in a list of files or a file name to read, essentially. And my objection to that, as far as light curve is concerned, is that as a light curve user, both from what I'm already used to in Python and what a lot of people are used to in IDL or SSW, is that you don't necessarily want to just pick a file name, you want to deal with it in time ranges, because that's kind of how you think. And then that led on to a discussion about the database. So I want to be able to put in a file if I want to, but really I want to say I want a light curve for the last week in, from Goes or from Lyra or whatever, and for the object to actually just figure out what's necessary to give me that back. And basically, all that information should be enough to give, to produce the light curve that you desire. Still want to chime in here at all?
Yeah, so the first stage of the idea was to just get it working from file names, basically, so that you had to download the files, specify the files like you do to map at the moment, which I realise is, in some regards, a step backwards from the current functionality we have. But I think it's more important to get that working than it is to keep going forever and never get it where we want it to go, rather than tidying up light curve to make it easier for people to work on, because it's not very developer friendly at the moment, I don't think.
Well, one of the reasons it's not, aside from the actual writing of it, is that we keep talking about, we're going to completely refactor it. And so you know that any significant work you do on it is probably going to be thrown out.
Or at least, heavily changed.
The way we keep talking about it, this is imminent, this will happen soon, and of course, imminent drags on. And so, like, if I see something, that would be good for light curve, or that would be good for, say, specifically a Go's light curve, or specifically a Lyra light curve, some extra functionality, or even some bug, me as an example would be far less likely to put a huge amount or any kind of effort into that, because I know it's going to be thrown away and undone, and I keep getting told imminently. So that's actually a lot of the reason why it's not developer friendly.
Yeah, true. Anyway, we had in a previous version of these meetings agreed that we were going to make, these changes in a very hand-wavy kind of way for 0.7. Like, we were going to factory class light curve for 0.7.
Yeah, right. This is meant to be the #1 priority, right, for 0.7?
Yes. Basically, the point that Dan is making, or was making the other day, is that the factory class for light curve, as designed, removes the functionality of going, I want this light curve between this time and this time, in a very easy way.
Right, well, the goal is to separate the downloading from the creation of the objects, right?
Indeed.
So that was the main thing that caused that temporarily.
I still think that's a good idea. I don't like the idea of typing in of a time range and a spacecraft or an instrument or anything like that. I think following the map methodology is the way to go. It makes things simpler to maintain, and one side, the light curve itself can be abstracted out from the downloading, which may change again in the future. So I am a fan of the map method. Get the data first and then do something with it.
Do you mean from a design, a back-end point of view, or do you mean from a user point of view? But the user should never be able to put in
a user's point of view as well, for the clarity of what you're actually doing, the steps you have to take to view the data that you want. if you have to explicitly add in this file and that file, and two files, let's say, to cover the time range that you're interested in, and you should do that. It should be explicit, or you should have to do that explicitly.
Well, that can become very cumbersome if you're looking at more than just, well, not even looking, if you want to construct a light curve object, which is more than just a day or two, or one file or two.
How? Why is that cumbersome? If I make one request for like a week's worth of data or a month's worth of data, and I get a file list, and then I pass that file list into the light curve constructor, and then the light curve constructor handles the actual construction of the light curve, taking into account gaps, potential gaps, then I think that's
and it
there's
already
some
does
value.
that. We
What was
already
that?
do that. That's pretty much what the light curve already does.
Yes.
So we already have all that functionality.
So when I'm constructing a map cube, for example, then I commonly want to know what what every file is, right? Or I have a list of files anyway that I can examine later. There's nothing mysterious. Like if some of them double up or there's one or two missing, then I have that list of files anyway. If you try and combine the acquisition of data with its presentation and storage and in an object, then we've kind of confused those two, and there's less information to them. It's less explicit to the user what went on.
Well, I don't see why you can't also have somewhere stored the list of files that it used to solve that problem.
That's still hidden. It's still hidden. The steps should be explicit to the user to start off with.
So that every time you want to create a light curve for, say, a month or 6 months or a year or whatever, you've got to first compile a list of every file in that year.
That's what I have to do if I want 6 hours of AIA data. I have to have that data somewhere and then throw it into the map cube constructor or the composite map constructor. So
at least that's still the best way to do it. I mean,
what was that?
At least that's still the best way to have to do it. I mean, there's no reason why you can't have a record of the files used in the light curve object. It's just a list of strings or whatever. But is it really necessary to have to put 2 steps? And depending on, again, I mean, it also depends on the tools that you have to compile those that list of files. You have to do it manually from your own SunPy data directory. That's a bit of a pain if you want to look at a long time period. Whereas if you put it in time range, the object, or maybe some wrapper around the object, if you want to have those two, like the factory class and the downloading separate, you have a wrapper to combine those two. And you say, I just want from this time range, because that's actually what you want. You don't want necessarily files, you want a time range. You want like the data for that time.
I would prefer that functionality.
Sorry?
Sorry, I would prefer that functionality would be in the downloader class, that you say, like, I want the data, I want to construct a time series of data from this range. I can see that makes sense in the unified downloader, but not in the constructor of the light curve.
I actually think I've already kind of had this discussion with Dan, but I think that the actual place that functionality needs to live is in the database.
Oh, I don't know. But what if you don't use the database?
I think it shouldn't be optional to some extent. If you want that
To some
functionality, I think if you
to
want
some
that
extent, you
functionality,
should not be-
no, if you want that functionality of it tracking your local files on disk, you have to use the database. There's no major overhead to the database. It's one extra Python package to install, and it all works. Probably, or we can make it work. It's not like we're asking users to learn how to write SQL queries before they request the data.
No, I know, but when you think about how scientists tend to work, it's a big change for most people. I mean, most people organize their own data themselves, right? That's just the way
Yeah,
people
but they
operate.
shouldn't.
Well, I know, but trying to change that culture is quite difficult, right?
But to some extent, okay. Well, but my point is that if you want a SunPy object that will automatically know what files you have available to you and create objects for you, like Dan is requesting, the functionality we have in SunPy to do that is the database module. So therefore, we should use that.
Well,
Who
yeah, I see
uses the
what you mean.
database module here?
Pardon?
Do you use the database module?
I have not. I haven't used it for anything production grade myself, but that's because I don't actually do observational solar physics. Remember, but I have
Dan?
bullied other people into using it.
No, I haven't. But the way Jill was describing it to me when we were talking last week, sounds like it would be really helpful.
So
I mean, there's an SSW database already. So I mean, like, is it conceptually that different from that? If you want to construct a goes light curve through SSW IDO, right? You give the object a time range. It goes to the SSW DB, whether it's on a server or locally on your machine, and it creates that light curve object. It's not a complete departure from how physicists or scientists work in solar physics.
SSWDB is for like auxiliary files and things like that.
Yes, yeah, it's not for the science data you're talking about.
Well, all the Go stuff is associated with it.
That's an exception.
The exception
Anyway,
proves your statement.
The point is
No,
that the
it's an
database-
exception. It's a real exception. How much other science data is in SSWDB? Almost nothing. Where's the AIA? Why isn't that in there? It's not in
Well,
there.
that doesn't mean that organizing your data isn't a good idea.
No, SSWDB is different from the database.
Right, that's
in
fine.
SunPy.
But my point purely was that there is a precedent for having, putting in a time range and an object returning you that light curve by going to a database where data is. It's not a total departure from anything, and sounds like to me it's a good idea. At least certainly in principle. I'm not saying
I would
in
like
code.
to point out.
Principle it is.
Sorry.
And why shouldn't we extend that to make it standard if we can? If you want to keep track of what files you've got, sounds sensible.
Also,
I don't think
we are building the unified downloader thing. Oh, new dog. And it has, by design, the same interface as the database. So if once the user knows how to use one, they can use the other. Literally.
There's nothing wrong with using the SunPy database. That's fine, but users should not be constrained to using that.
No, you wouldn't be.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just saying. When I said you should have to use it, I don't mean you should have to use it like always. I just mean if you want that functionality, then the piece of software we have that provides it is the database.
Yeah,
so you should
sure.
have to use the database because you want the functionality that provides it. That's like saying I want to view an image, but I don't want to use map. That's just stupid.
You can do it if you like.
Exactly.
You're not explicitly forbidden from doing it.
Well, yeah, the same goes for everything. But
if you make the light curve object like a practical class like map, but then add in this combined unified downloader and database functionality, possibly with a wrapper, possibly not, whatever. But if we allow it to all work in this way, it doesn't mean that you can't take a file, rename it, Jack's favorite file, and put it in your desktop, and feed that file straight into, the isolated light curve object, right? Or at least in the isolated factory class.
Yes. Okay, so I think we have, as usual, gone round in circles for a little while and come back to this place where we started. I don't think there were any spectacular disagreements to doing what we have planned, which is the Leica factory class out of file names explicitly for the moment. I mean, I know Dan thinks that it shouldn't stay like that because there should be an extra wrapper on top of it somehow. And after our conversation last week, I have a design for this floating around in my head, and I will probably write up a separate SEP for it because I think it might make quite a good GSOC project this year. Which basically involves integrating the unified downloader into the database and changing the way we do the current search caching. Because the database at the moment will cache your VSO queries and provide you the data back if you do the same VSO query twice. If we're going to use this as described, this needs modifying. And I am in the process of developing the way I think this should be done.
So how would that work with, so would you want the light curve and, let's say, map would give you would throw in the things that you want, right? I want 6 hours of AIA data from last Tuesday, and that would go into the map, into the
map factory.
Yeah.
That is one of the ideas I had, yes. That if you pass a valid database query into map, it will search your database. It will pass it through to database, perform a database query, get the results back, and create the object for you. Whether that involves downloading it from the internet or not, depending on whether you have the data already.
Okay, well, I don't see any problem with that.
That is basically the idea I had, which is if we make the database we need to make the database use FIDO instead of the VSO, because at the moment you can pass through VSO queries. So if we make it use FIDO, we get all of Lightcurve and anything else we add in the future, and all of JSOC for that matter. And then if you add, so at the moment the database caches VSO queries, so it will serialize a VSO query, and then if you give it the same query twice, it will go, oh, you've already given me this query, I know the records I need to return to you, here, have these records instead of the results from the query. I think, but I don't know, is that if we cache results from the query instead of the actual query, then that allows us more fine-grained control over the results of the query we need to refetch the data for. But that is something I need to work on. I don't really want to go into it at the moment. But basically it allows you to cache, to do a query which is a superset of a previous query, and it will only download the data you need to download rather than all the data again.
An example of that would be like that. Where that would be useful is if you ask for a month's worth of data, and you see something interesting at the end, and you want an extra day. Or for example, oh look, I looked at January. What's that? Look, now I want to actually do some analysis on January and February together combined. For instance, detecting certain events. You don't have to download all the data all over again. You just download the extra stuff that you need. Depending on the file size. And in Goes or whatever, that might not be much. In Lyra, it might be a bit more. In AIA, it's really significant.
Yeah.
So,
and then, anyway, so we come up with a way of doing that, basically, which is like fine-grained caching the database, which is the feature we really wanted out of the database, but we didn't have time to develop last time. And then potentially we can add the ability to throw a database query using like the attribute syntax that we have at the moment into a factory class, and it will return you the object having got you the data from either local or remote, depending on where it needs to come from.
This is assuming the query results don't change from one
Right.
to...
Yes, and unfortunately, VSO and all of the light curve sources, and I think JSOC have no way for us to tell that.
But you could,
They have no persistency information.
HEK does. HEK has a version number for their detections.
Yeah. Good.
but you could have functionality in that where, if you do a search of the database, or if you do a unified download, whatever interface you want the user to initially go through, is that you could have some keyword like, force download or replace or something, where if you happen to know there's new data out there, then you can force it to repopulate, or to replace your old files if you wanted to.
Yeah, so yeah, we would need some way, because of the limitations of the server services that are available, we would need some way for the user to go re-download me this data. This data is, or these records in the database are now shot, get me new ones. And I don't think we have that at the moment either. Shall add it to the list.
Or the database server to say, don't cache these results, because if they know they're going to change, or
like server side to tell us that, or
right,
the user to tell
the
us
server
that.
side would.
Okay, you're right. Well, what would be better from the server side is for us to have some method of going, we have this data, is it still the most recent data?
Right.
Like return a HTTP 304, is it? 303, record not changed kind of thing.
Even if the files have some kind of like, date downloaded or date modified, or does that completely change if you download it, becomes a completely separate copy of the file?
Yeah, I don't know. This is a really sticky subject, and I don't think there is any nice way of implementing it just from client side. To do it well, we would need cooperation from services like VSO and probably the data providers that VSO uses as well. I've had conversations like this with Joe in the IRC channel before, and not got anywhere.
I think it's enough that the user can just overwrite the data.
Yeah,
that's all you need.
That would be the most basic level of functionality that we would need, would the user to go.
I think that's what you need to start off with anyway.
Yeah.
If you have that, then it's a working functionality.
Exactly. That's fine. That's just a method of cache clearing. You could do something like, you could have a method on the database.
Hey, finish off and lock it up.
Oh yeah, sure. I'll just move outside, man. It's fine.
Cheers.
Cheers. Just got kicked out of the room I was hiding in. Okay. Yeah. You could have some method on the database where you throw a query to the method of the database, and all the results that query finds are then deleted or something, or flagged for removal or replacement. Anyway, that's fine. I will add that. That's a good thing. I did not have it on the list of features that would be needed, so I've added it to the list. I will, over the course of the next little while, or probably medium while, write up a SEP/project description, and hopefully we can get a summer code student to implement some of this. But that is dependent on us getting the light curve and factories.
This is a refinement on light curve, right? We can still start with like a list of files.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, we have to start like that. We can't. This functionality is not useful without having light curve upgraded first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys talk about like a common or subset of a meta object between map and light curve?
No, that is something else. I don't know. I'm still yet to be convinced by this. as a concept. I know.
Why is that?
Oh, because I am yet to be provided with a working design that I think will actually solve any problems. Because currently we standardize the metadata. That is basically the functionality of map. Is to standardize the imaging metadata. That is what it does. And I'm not sure whether there's any advantages to having it done differently. But there we are. I don't know. I agree it is kind of a problem that needs solving, but it's not an easy one, I'll give you that much.
Jack, could you repeat the question there? I didn't actually catch it. Or maybe
was there any discussion about having some subset of the meta headers from map and light curve to try and unify at least some subset?
You mean map and light curve actually being subclasses of a parent?
Yeah. I mean, this
no, that's different. Hang on.
We didn't discuss that, but the tiny little bit of work I did on Friday, which was mainly me just trying to understand how the map object works. I was just coming across a lot of stuff that looked like I could actually copy and paste. If
you're talking about the factory, though, right?
I'm talking about the factory, yeah.
Yeah, the factory will have a common parent, but that wasn't. Jack was talking more about the metadata, which is the actual light curve on map object, as opposed to the factory object.
Yeah.
No, in answer to your question, no, and I don't think that is going to get done. It's definitely not going to happen for 0.7. That's not a thing that's happening.
I suppose we really should have a better use case for that. I mean, I can see something for a region of interest object. Like a time range would be useful. Would be part of a region of interest object for a light curve, and that may have something to do. You can imagine similar kind of thing for a map cube or a map by itself, some kind of region of interest. David's worked a little bit on that.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe that might be a better way to.
Yeah, I think.
That problem.
In the process of implementing the light curve factory, we will have to do something with light curve metadata.
Yeah.
But I don't know what until we get there. In my previous experimentations with light curve factory classes, I remember managing to hack around this problem, basically.
What was the problem with light curve metadata?
There isn't any. Or there certainly isn't. There is, exactly. Everything is wrong with light curve metadata. In that there either isn't any, it's a complete shambles. It's different. At least with map, at least you're always getting a consistent format in that you're always getting a dictionary because you're invariably reading a FITS file. With light curve metadata, you might not even have any metadata if you're reading a CSV file. If you're reading some flipping light curves read multiple HDUs out of a FITS file.
Right. Well, how many? What are you talking about? Specific instruments?
I'm talking things like what instrument it's from, what wavelength it's at, what's the start and end time range, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the formatting is very inconsistent in time series data compared to imaging. It's a big problem actually.
So I think there's the problem goes deeper because at least with FITS has at least some metadata that somebody had thought about standardizing, right?
Yeah, and then 90% of
curves,
decide they can ignore it.
At least, you have a model and somebody's thought about it, right? But in light curves, it's not. In general, it's not like that at all. And when you look at multiple light curves down, it's just a complete mess.
About the data that I'd use most often, and those XRS, Lyra, Resi, right, as well. They're all FITS.
Yeah, but what about
example?
Yeah, there's particle data might be interested in. They're from completely different fields. So not completely different fields, but Data which is of interest to solar physics from other missions which may not be directly solar physics.
So, as a specific implementation detail, the point where this becomes tricky is when you are concatenating multiple light curves together. So if you take two light curve objects with some metadata dictionary, which independently is fine, if you then add them together, extend the time range one with the other. Say you've got two goes light curves and you want to make one goes light curve because they happen to follow along from each other. How do you, apart from now, you've now got two metadata dictionaries, and without some kind of standardization, how do you successfully combine those two dictionaries into the one metadata dictionary for the output object?
Yeah, we never did solve this, did we?
No.
Which is one of the
So,
reasons why this is still outstanding.
that is probably the single hardest implementation problem to overcome with the factory class.
What were the problems discussed before about that?
We never really got anywhere because
What were the problems?
well, so if you add two instruments together, if you add two light curves together, the simplest way of keeping the metadata is just to keep both dictionaries, right? If you add two light curves together, you add one pandas data frame to another pandas data frame, you have one data frame. That's easy. If any of the times overlap, if any of the rows overlap with each other, pandas will spew it back at you and go, you can't add these two together, stop being such a moron. But what do you do with the header? What do you do with the metadata, the dictionary? Because if you can just keep both, but if you're adding two of the same instruments together, you now have a load of redundant data. And the validation for adding the two together needs to take into account the metadata. Like, you shouldn't add a ghost time series in one wavelength to a ghost time series in another wavelength or whatever. You shouldn't add two instruments that are not the same together or something, anything. It's difficult to do. Concatenation of light curve objects is challenging.
Yeah, and you can also lose the link between the data and the appropriate header. Like, if you merged 5 files together, it's no longer so obvious which data came from which file, and you have to go and then try and figure that out again. So there are all sorts of issues there. It's trying to understand the data from the headers once you've merged things. So that's another issue. Because if you do it, well, you may not necessarily know in advance. If you were doing it, let's say, what you were talking about earlier, where you just do it from a time range, you may not even know how many files it used to create your light curve. Maybe you have a list of them somewhere, but then it's not so obvious which data came from which file, and then you have other issues there. So it's not very. There's a lot of problems. Let's put it that way.
That is obviously, yeah, you'd obviously have to have a solution to that, so you could combine all the data in all ways. But how much of that is how much is there any of that which is a bit above and beyond core, if you know what I mean? For instance, should the fact that that is very difficult stop us implementing functionality that an individual scientist doing it manually, they'd still have that same problem anyway?
No, this is my point. You can hack around it. You can come up with a working solution, but it is probably going to be ugly.
But if you were to leave an individual to do their own analysis, with the data files, they would probably not concatenate their metadata manually, right?
You're right. It's a problem either way, whether you do it manually or not.
So, right. So the fact that we can't come up with a perfect solution, we should be careful that the fact that we can't come up with a perfect solution, or a perfect solution is very difficult. We've got to be careful that doesn't stop us actually improving functionality and doing the things that can be done. Right?
Well, I think we need at least a basic solution so they can present less. I mean, like Stuart said, the most easy thing to do is to just keep all the methods, right? It's kind of ugly. It's very ugly, but you can do it that way. But it would be nice to have like an Uber meta, if you like, sort of summarizes one meta that summarizes what's in your data. But that's harder.
I agree, but
But
maybe
that is not a blocker on actually doing it in the first place. Ugly first, pretty afterwards.
Yeah, yes. Well, depends how ugly, I guess.
It's no more ugly than what we've got at the moment, which is nothing. We can't add light curves together. Our solution to this at the moment is don't do it.
Run away.
Exactly.
but also what we have is just keeping all the metadata is in like a list of dictionaries or whatever it's no uglier than what an individual do on a case-by-case basis for their own stuff. So that is certainly not a like a disimprovement, if that's even a word, from what you'd be doing anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the best solution. The best solution that I can think of is you have a container metadata object, which is sliceable. So you can go, I want my metadata from row X to row Y, and it returns you the metadata that is attributed to the rows you give it when you index the object. So basically, you have a mapping between the rows in the pandas data frame and the metadata. This may be the best hack that we can come up with for the first version of this code.
You need like an umbrella over all that, all those individual files, and then you access those individual files through methods through the umbrella.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but that's fine. As I say, this is probably the stickiest implementation detail, but it is just that. It is an implementation detail. We'll work it out. So this brings us back to the fact that we need to get the freaking Fido PR merged already. Dan said that he's going to start working on the actual factory implementation, which can be done independently from Fido, but we can't have one in master without the other. Well, no, we can't have the light curve factory in Fido in master without Fido in master, because if you merge the light curve factory, then you delete the ability to download files through light curve, and if you haven't got something else in to replace that functionality, then you just can't download the data anymore.
Yeah, let's not do that.
The bleeding edge is just chopped off a limb there, right? For master.
So we need to get the factory. We need to get the data downloader merged.
Yeah, I'm willing to look at that if
the main thing that needs doing.
Ready for some silly questions.
The main thing that needs doing is documentation, because there is currently next to none.
Okay.
So it needs setting up with Sphinx to build all the documentation, the API docs, and it needs narrative docs.
Well, I think that's a good way for me to learn how Fido works.
And there are currently a hunk of failing tests.
Yeah.
We do have some new contributor in the IRC channel who is between revising for exams, fixing them slowly. Hopefully. But if anyone wants to fix some tests, there is also that to do. There is also a to-do list on PR 1300. But mostly that can be summed up in fix the tests and write the documentation.
All right. Well, I have another meeting soon,
Silence.
so I'm probably gonna sign off in a minute.
I have my dinner soon.
Aha.
Well, I think it sounds to me that there may be a little bit of debate yet to be had about whether you input a time range or a file list. But
file list.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think we agree on pretty much everything else, which about refactoring the light curve as a factory work in a unified downloader. I don't know if we came to a conclusion yet about the database or not, but there didn't seem to be rejection.
Database is definitely a 0.8 problem.
Oh, right. I'm not saying all this has to be 0.7,
Yeah.
but this.
The time range thing. I think the time range thing is going to have to be dropped for 0.7 for this to work. And I think you are reluctantly agreeing with that.
There's a lot of work to take the steps back that we're talking about to get forward again towards that. I accept there's a lot needs to happen for that. So yeah, but I would still champion that functionality being on the horizon.
Yeah, well, I will attempt to get a Summer of Code project student to implement that. But that does involve us releasing 0.7 February time. So
2016, right?
pick it up, people. Pick it up.
Tight. Let's say that.
And as I say, pick it up. I'm tapping out for the next couple of weeks because I need to pass my Viva. So have fun with that. Bye.
Yeah. Well, good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. But would people be willing to take some very silly questions about math and factory classes if I'm looking into this for that show? Anyone here knows much about that?
Now or like in general or what?
No, not now. In general.
Yeah, of course. All questions always welcome. If IRC is a wasteland, send them to the dev mailing list.
Yeah.
Alright, I'll start looking at Fido again.
Fido needs some love. Poor dog. It's been completely neglected. We have the RSPCA knocking on our door soon. Kevin, you got anything you want to chat about? So, first time you come in.
Well, I gotta go, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
It says that Kevin's checked out, so...
I'm still here.
Oh,
Oh,
Have you
you're
got
there.
anything you wanna chat about?
No, nothing.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, so exciting. It's merging, concatenating time series.
Yeah, it's all good fun.
this is how the sausage is made.
Why does it always taste so good?
I hope it'll taste good.